In a kingdom where humans kneel or die, one woman did the unthinkable. She struck the Alpha King across the face in front of 1,000 witnesses. What happened next changed everything. Stay until the end to see how a simple candle maker became the most dangerous woman in the realm. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The wolves came at dawn. Mara Vance was elbow deep in tallow when she heard the screams. Her hands, slick with fat and ash, froze over the copper kettle. Through the warped glass of her workshop window, she watched armored figures pour into the village square like a flood of iron and teeth. Royal collectors. She'd known they were coming. Everyone had. The whispers had started 3 days ago when old Garrett spotted the banners on the northern road, crimson and black, the twin wolves of House Kyle. But knowing and seeing were different things. Knowing was a knot in your stomach. Seeing was watching your neighbors dragged from their homes while soldiers tore through grain stores and livestock pens like locusts. Stay inside, her father had said that morning, his voice rough with something between fear and resignation. Keep your head down. Let them take what they want. Mara had nodded. She'd meant it too. But that was before she saw them drag Mrs. Chen into the mud. Before she watched a collector backhand Marcus Webb for moving too slowly. Before she realized that what they want meant everything. Every bushel of wheat, every copper coin, every scrap of dignity the village of Ashford had left. She stepped outside. The cold hit her first, sharp enough to sting. Late autumn in the frontier territories didn't mess around. The sky was the color of old bruises, heavy with clouds that promised snow. Mara's breath misted in front of her face as she crossed the threshold, her boots crunching on frost-hardened dirt. The village square was chaos. A wagon sat in the center, already half full with sacks of grain and crates of salted meat. Soldiers moved through the crowd with brutal efficiency, their movements precise and utterly devoid of mercy. They wore the king's colors, black leather and crimson cloth, and every one of them was wolf-born. You could tell by the way they moved, all coiled power and predatory grace. Even in human form, they were other, bigger, faster, built for violence in a way that made regular people look like paper dolls. Mara's eyes found the leader immediately. He stood near the wagon, a tall man with silver threading through his dark hair and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. His armor was finer than the others, marked with an insignia she didn't recognize. He held a scroll in one hand and was reading from it in a voice that carried across the square like a pronouncement from the gallows. By order of His Majesty King Ronan Kale, Alpha of the Northern Territories and Lord of the Frontier Kingdoms, the village of Ashford is hereby assessed the following tribute. The list was long: grain, livestock, metals, cloth, percentages and quantities that might as well have been written in blood. Mara's father had explained it to her once, years ago, back when she still thought the world made sense. The frontier villages paid tribute to the capital. In exchange, the wolves protected them from the wild lands beyond the border, from rogue packs and worse things that had no names. It was supposed to be fair. It never was. And in accordance with the Harvest Tithe Act, any household unable to meet its obligation will forfeit property or service as determined by the Crown's appointed. "That's my seed grain!" The shout came from somewhere in the crowd. Mara turned and saw Thomas Bridger pushing forward, his weathered face twisted with desperation. "You take that! We don't plant! We don't plant! We starve!" The soldier nearest him moved fast. One moment Thomas was standing. The next he was on his knees, gasping, the soldier's boot planted between his shoulder blades. "Tribute is not negotiable," the leader said without looking up from his scroll. "Resistance is treason." "It's murder," Mara said. She hadn't meant to speak. The words just came out, loud and clear in the terrible silence that followed Thomas hitting the ground. Every head in the square turned toward her. The leader's eyes found hers. They were pale, almost colorless. Wolf eyes. "Excuse me?" Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. Every instinct she had screamed at her to back down, apologize, disappear. But Thomas was still on the ground. Mrs. Chen was crying. Marcus had blood running down his chin, and she was so tired of being afraid. "I said it's murder." She took a step forward, then another. You take the seed grain, you're killing us, just slower than if you used a knife. The square had gone silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The leader studied her for a long moment. Then he handed the scroll to the soldier beside him and walked toward her with the kind of casual confidence that came from never having met an obstacle he couldn't break. He stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he was even bigger than she'd thought, broad-shouldered and heavily muscled, with the kind of scars that came from real fights, not training yard practice. "What's your name, girl?" "Mara Vance." "Well, Mara Vance." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "Do you know what happens to people who accuse the king's soldiers of murder?" She did. Everyone did. "Same thing that happens to people who don't," she said. "We die, just with different paperwork." Something flickered in his expression. Not quite surprise, more like recognition, like he was seeing something he hadn't expected. "You've got spine," he said. "Stupid, but spine." He turned away, addressing the crowd. "The tribute stands. You have until sunset to comply. Anyone who interferes will be arrested and transported to the capital for judgment." He started walking back toward the wagon. Mara's hands clenched into fists. She thought about her father, who'd spent 30 years bowing to wolves, about her mother's grave on the hill, marked with nothing but a wooden cross because they couldn't afford stone, about every year that the collectors came and took more, always more, until there was nothing left but hunger and desperation and the awful, grinding knowledge that it would never stop. "Then I'm going with it." The leader stopped. "What?" "The tribute." Mara's voice was steady despite the terror trying to crawl up her throat. "I'm delivering it myself, to the capital, to the king." The crowd erupted. Her father's voice rose above the others. "Mara, no!" But she didn't look at him. Couldn't. If she looked, she'd lose her nerve. The leader turned back, and now there was definitely surprise in his expression. "You want to deliver tribute to the Alpha King, personally." "That's right. Do you have any idea what you're asking?" "I'm asking for an audience. Isn't that our right, as subjects?" She'd heard that somewhere, maybe in one of the old stories. Whether it was actually true didn't matter. She was committed now. The leader's mouth twitched. It might have been the beginning of a smile. An audience. At the capital. Yes. During the claiming season. Mara had no idea what that meant, but she nodded anyway. Now he definitely smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "All right, Mara Vance, you want to meet the king? Let's see how that works out for you." The journey took 4 days. They traveled in a convoy, 3 wagons loaded with Ashford's tribute, a dozen soldiers on horseback, and Mara riding in the back of the lead wagon with her wrists bound and her father's horrified face burned into her memory. She tried to explain, tried to make him understand that this was the only move left. But he'd just looked at her like she was already dead, and maybe she was. Maybe she'd died the moment she opened her mouth in the square. Everything since then was just the long fall before hitting the ground. The landscape changed as they traveled north. The frontier territories gave way to settled farmland, then to estates and manor houses, then finally to the outer districts of the capital itself. Kael's Gate. It rose from the plains like a fist of stone and steel, massive walls, guard towers, buildings that climbed toward the sky in defiance of gravity and good sense. Mara had never seen anything like it. In Ashford, the tallest structure was the grain silo. Here, even the poorest neighborhoods had buildings 4 stories high. And everywhere, were wolves. They walked the streets in human form, but you could always tell. The way they moved, the way people made space for them without thinking. The casual arrogance that came from being apex predators in a world that still pretended to be civilized. The convoy didn't stop in the outer districts. They rolled straight through to the inner city, past market squares and guild halls, past temples and theaters, until finally the palace itself came into view. Mara's breath caught. It wasn't beautiful. Beautiful was too small a word. It was overwhelming, all black stone and crimson banners, built like a fortress, and a cathedral had a baby, and that baby was raised on blood and conquest. The main gates were 20 feet high and flanked by statues of wolves so lifelike she half expected them to move. The lead soldier, she'd learned his name was Captain Vec, pulled her out of the wagon personally. "Last chance to run," he said, not unkindly. Once you're through those gates, there's no taking it back. Mara looked up at the palace, at the banners snapping in the wind, at the guards watching from the walls with eyes that glowed faintly in the fading light. I didn't come here to run. Vex shook his head. No, I don't suppose you did. He cut the bonds on her wrists. Try not to die too quickly. I've got money riding on you lasting at least 10 minutes. They took her inside. The palace was a maze. Corridors branched off corridors, staircases spiraled up and down, and every surface was covered in art that probably cost more than Ashford's entire annual production. Mara tried to memorize the route. Left, right, up 2 flights, through a gallery with paintings of people who all looked like they'd never smiled in their lives, but gave up after the first dozen turns. Finally, they stopped in front of a set of double doors carved with scenes of wolves hunting deer. Captain Vex straightened his uniform. The Grand Hall, claiming season's in full swing, so it's going to be crowded. Stay close. Don't touch anything. And for the love of the moon, don't speak unless the king addresses you directly. What's claiming season? He gave her a look that was equal parts pity and amusement. You're about to find out. The doors opened. Sound hit her first, conversation, laughter, the clink of glasses and rustle of expensive fabric. Then light, pouring from chandeliers the size of carriages. Then the smell, perfume and wine and something else, something wild and electric that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. The grand hall was vast. High ceilings supported by pillars carved to look like trees. Walls hung with tapestries depicting battles and hunts. And people, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all dressed in clothes so fine they made Mara acutely aware that she was wearing a wool dress stained with tallow and mud. But it was the far end of the hall that held her attention. There was a throne there, not the kind from storybooks, all gold and jewels. This one was made of black wood and bone, angular and severe, built to make anyone sitting in it look like judgment incarnate. And the man on that throne, Ronan Kael, was not handsome. Handsome was too soft, too safe. He was striking in the way a knife was striking, all sharp lines and contained violence. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by someone who didn't believe in mercy. He wore black, unadorned except for a single crimson cloak that spilled down the throne like blood. Even from across the room, Mara could feel the weight of his presence. This was what an alpha looked like. This was power made flesh. Presenting tribute from the village of Ashford, Captain Veck announced, his voice cutting through the chatter. Delivered by... He paused. Mara Vance, citizen of Ashford, who requests an audience with His Majesty. The hall went quiet. Every eye in the room turned toward her. Nobles in silk, soldiers in armor, women wearing gowns that cost more than houses, their necks and wrists glittering with jewelry. And all of them, every single one, was staring at her like she'd just announced she could fly. Ronan Kael leaned forward slightly. When he spoke, his voice was deep and cold enough to frost glass. You brought tribute, and yourself. How efficient. His eyes traveled over her, assessing. You're human. It wasn't a question, but Mara nodded anyway. And you want an audience, during claiming season. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. Do you have any idea what that means? No, Your Majesty. More laughter. Ronan's expression didn't change. It means you've walked into a room full of unmated wolves during the one time of year when they're actively looking for mates. It means every dominant in this hall can smell your fear, and it means... He stopped. His head tilted slightly like he was listening to something only he could hear. His eyes narrowed. What's your name again? Mara Vance? Well, Mara Vance. He stood, and even that simple movement was commanding. You've made a mistake. But since you've come all this way, I'll grant your audience. Speak. Why are you here? This was it. The moment she'd been building towards since the square in Ashford. Mara took a breath, forcing her voice to stay steady. The tribute is wrong. Silence. Absolute and terrible. Wrong, Ronan repeated slowly. Yes. You're taking seed grain, storage supplies, breeding livestock. You're not collecting tribute. You're strip mining villages until there's nothing left. Someone gasped. Mara ignored it. We're subjects, not slaves. We pay our due. But what you're doing isn't protection, it's extortion. And if it keeps up, there won't be any frontier villages left to tax. She stopped. Her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. Every instinct screamed that she'd just signed her death warrant. Ronan descended from the throne. He moved like water, smooth, inevitable, dangerous. The crowd parted for him without thinking. He stopped directly in front of her. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. Taller, broader. His eyes were so dark they looked black, and they pinned her in place like a butterfly on a board. "You came here," he said softly, "to the heart of my kingdom, during the most dangerous week of the year, to tell me I'm running my own territory wrong." "Yes." "You have impressive courage." He paused. "Or impressive stupidity. I haven't decided which." "Maybe both," Mara said. His eyebrows rose fractionally. "You're not begging. Most humans beg when they're this close to me." "Would it work?" "No." "Then why waste the time?" Something flickered in his expression. Not quite amusement, something sharper. "The tribute stands. Your village will comply. And you—" He turned to Captain Vec. "Escort Miss Vance to the holding cells until I decide what to do with her." "Wait! We're done here." Rage flared in Mara's chest, hot and sudden. She'd come all this way, risked everything, and he was dismissing her like she was nothing. Her hand moved before her brain could catch up. The slap echoed through the grand hall like a gunshot. For one perfect, crystalline second, nobody moved, nobody breathed. The entire room hung suspended in shock. Ronan's head had turned from the impact. Slowly, so slowly, he brought it back to center. There was a mark on his cheek, red, already darkening. His eyes met hers. They'd gone completely cold. Not angry, worse than angry, empty. "Did you just," he said, very quietly, "strike me?" Mara's hand was still raised. She lowered it. Her palm stung. "Yes." "In front of my entire court?" "Yes." "Do you have any idea what the penalty is for assaulting the king?" She did. Everyone did. "Death." Ronan took a step closer, then another. His face was inches from hers now, and she could smell him, smoke and cedar, and something wild that made her hindbrain scream predator. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met," he breathed, "or the most suicidal." "Which is it, Mara Vance?" Her voice came out steadier than she had any right to. "You'll have to figure that out yourself." For a long moment, he just stared at her. The hall was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Then Ronan smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf gives a rabbit right before the chase begins. "Interesting," he said. "Captain Vec, belay that order. Miss Vance will be staying in the palace as my guest." He turned to address the room, his voice carrying. "Let it be known, this human is under my personal protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me directly." Murmurs erupted. Confusion, outrage, fear. Ronan ignored all of it. His eyes never left Mara's. "You wanted an audience," he said. "You've got one. Let's see how long you survive it." He turned and walked back toward the throne, leaving Mara standing in the center of the hall with 100 hostile stares burning into her back. She'd wanted to make an impression. Mission accomplished. They gave her a room in the East Wing, not a cell. An actual room with a bed that had silk sheets and a window overlooking gardens she couldn't name. There was a wash basin with hot water. Hot water, like they had servants whose only job was to keep it ready. And a wardrobe full of dresses she wouldn't know how to put on if her life depended on it. Which, considering where she was, it probably did. Mara stood at the window and watched the sun set over Kael's gate. The city spread out below like a living map, all amber light and dark shadows. Somewhere down there, the tribute wagons from Ashford were being unloaded. Somewhere down there, Captain Vec was probably collecting his winnings because she'd survived longer than 10 minutes. Somewhere down there was a world that made sense. A knock at the door made her turn. "Come in." The woman who entered was older, maybe 50, with steel-gray hair pinned back so tight it must have hurt. She wore black and crimson, palace colors, and carried herself with the kind of rigid posture that came from years of service. "Miss Vance, I'm Hester Gray, head of household staff. I've been instructed to see to your needs." The pause before needs was loaded with judgment. I don't need anything. Nevertheless, Hester's eyes swept over Mara's stained dress with obvious distaste. You cannot appear at dinner looking like that. His Majesty has requested your presence. Requested. It wasn't a question, dear. 2 hours later, Mara was clean, dressed in a gown the color of deep emerald, and absolutely furious about all of it. The dress fit perfectly, which meant someone had taken her measurements while she wasn't paying attention. It was beautiful, she could admit that much, with detailed embroidery and a neckline that showed more skin than she was comfortable with. But it also felt like a costume, like they were dressing her up to play a part she hadn't auditioned for. Hester had tried to do something with her hair. Mara had drawn the line at that. You look presentable, Hester said, which was probably the closest thing to a compliment Mara was going to get. Try not to embarrass yourself further. No promises. The dining hall was smaller than the grand hall, but no less intimidating. A long table dominated the center, already set with enough silverware to confuse a duchess. Candles burned in iron sconces on the walls, casting everything in warm, flickering light. And at the head of the table sat Ronan Kael. He'd changed clothes. The armor was gone, replaced by dark pants and a shirt that was open at the collar. More casual, more human. But the effect was somehow worse because now Mara could see the lines of muscle beneath the fabric, the casual power in the way he held his wine glass. He looked up when she entered. Mara Vance, punctual. I appreciate that. He gestured to the chair at his right. Sit. She sat. 2 other people were already at the table. The woman was stunning. Sharp cheekbones, blonde hair cascading down her back, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Ashford's yearly taxes. She radiated the kind of beauty that was both natural and weaponized. The man was younger, maybe 30, with red hair and a scar across his throat. He watched Mara with open curiosity. Introductions, Ronan said. Lady Vivian Ashcroft, daughter of Duke Ashcroft, and currently my least subtle dinner companion. Vivian's smile was all teeth. Your Majesty is too kind. And Lord Cassian Rourke, my enforcer, and the reason half the Northern Territories still pay tribute on time. Cassian nodded. Miss Vance, you made quite an entrance earlier. So I've been told. Servants appeared with food, roasted meat, vegetables she didn't recognize, bread so fresh it steamed when cut. Enough to feed Ashford for a week. Mara's stomach turned. Ronan watched her over the rim of his glass. You're not eating. Not hungry. Liar. You're human. You burn through energy like a candle. He cut a piece of meat, placed it on her plate. Eat. Starving yourself is pointless martyrdom. Is that an order? Do you want it to be? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with subtext Mara didn't fully understand. Vivian laughed, the sound like breaking glass. She has spirit, I'll give her that. Tell me, dear, do you have any idea what you've walked into? A den of wolves who think humans are livestock. Oh, she's funny too. Vivian leaned forward, her eyes glittering. Let me educate you. Claiming season happens once a year. Every unmated dominant in the kingdom comes to court. They compete, they posture, they try to prove they're worthy of me, Ronan interrupted, or more specifically, of forming a bond with someone of alpha blood. It's politics dressed up as tradition. Mara looked at Vivian's perfect face, her expensive dress, the way she sat just a little too close to Ronan. And you're here to be claimed. We're all here to be claimed, darling. The difference is some of us were invited. Vivian. Ronan's voice was soft but carried warning. Play nice. I'm always nice, Your Majesty. Cassian cleared his throat. If I might ask, Miss Vance, why did you really come here? And don't say tribute. No one travels 4 days to deliver grain personally. Mara met his eyes. They were hazel, and unlike everyone else at this table, they held something approaching genuine curiosity. Because someone had to, she said. Because every year you take more and give back less. Because people are dying and no one who matters seems to care. And you think you matter? Vivian's smile was razor sharp. You're a human, a candle maker. You're nothing. Then why are you scared of me? The table went silent. Vivian's expression froze, then melted into something ugly. Scared? Of you? You haven't stopped staring at me since I sat down.
You're trying to figure out what the king sees in me. What makes me different? Mara leaned forward. And you're terrified you might lose to someone who doesn't even know the rules of the game. Vivian's hand moved so fast Mara barely saw it. One moment her wine glass was on the table.
The next it was airborne, red liquid arcing toward Mara's face. Ronan's hand shot out and caught it. Didn't even spill a drop. The temperature in the room plummeted. Vivian. His voice was ice wrapped in iron. You will apologize. Now. She insulted me. I don't care if she set you on fire. You do not throw things at my table. For a moment, Vivian looked like she might argue. Then she saw his face, and whatever she saw there made her go pale. My apologies, Miss Vance. I overreacted. Accepted, Mara said, because what else could she say? Ronan released the glass, setting it down with deliberate care. Dinner is over. Vivian, you're excused. Cassian, walk her out. Your Majesty, now. They left. Vivian shot Mara a look that promised murder, but she went. And then it was just Mara and Ronan in a room full of candles and half-eaten food. He stood, walking to the window. His back was to her, hands clasped behind him. You're making enemies. I made enemies the moment I walked through your gates. True, but you're not making it easier on yourself. He turned. Do you have a death wish? Do you? His eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You're the Alpha King, most powerful wolf in the territories, and you're wasting your time on claiming season politics while your frontier villages starve. She stood, facing him across the table. So yeah, I'm wondering if you have a death wish, because this kingdom won't survive if you keep bleeding it dry. You have no idea what you're talking about. Then explain it to me. He laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. You want the truth? Fine. Those politics are the only thing keeping this kingdom from tearing itself apart. The noble houses tolerate my rule because they think they have a chance at power through marriage. The moment I take a mate, the moment that door closes, half of them will start plotting rebellion. So you're stalling. I'm surviving. There's a difference. Mara crossed her arms. And while you're surviving, people are dying. People are always dying. That's what people do. Not if someone actually gave a damn about them. His eyes flashed. Literally, for just a second, they caught the light wrong and glowed. You think I don't care? You think I enjoy watching villages struggle? I'm one man holding together a kingdom that wants to fracture into 100 pieces. Every decision I make, someone suffers. Every choice I don't make, someone else pays the price. So don't stand there in your borrowed dress and lecture me about caring. The words should have made her back down. Should have reminded her who she was talking to. They didn't. Then do something about it. Like what? I don't know. You're the king. Figure it out. They stared at each other. The air between them crackled with tension, anger, and something else, something Mara didn't have a name for. Ronan moved first, 3 steps, and he was around the table, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. You're infuriating, he said quietly, so I've been told. And brave and stupid, and... He stopped. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something. His expression shifted. When did you last shift? What? Shift. Change. Full moon's in 3 days. When did you last... He froze. His eyes widened, fractionally. You can't. It wasn't a question. Mara's throat went tight. I'm human. You're... He stopped, stared at her. That's impossible. What is? But he was already backing away, his expression caught somewhere between shock and something that looked almost like panic. This isn't happening. You can't be... A knock at the door interrupted whatever he was about to say. Cassian entered without waiting for permission. His face was grim. Your Majesty, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where 3 separate attempts have been made to access Miss Vance's quarters in the last hour. Mara's blood went cold. What? All intercepted, Cassian continued. But the intent was clear. Someone wants her dead. Ronan's expression went completely blank. Then, gather the council, now, and double the guard on the east wing. Already done. Or triple it. Cassian left. Ronan turned back to Mara. Whatever moment they'd had before was gone, replaced by cold calculation.
You're staying in my quarters tonight. I'm what? My quarters are in the central tower, triple warded, guarded by my personal security, and under constant surveillance. It's the safest place in the palace. I'm not sleeping in your room. You're not sleeping. You're surviving. There's a difference. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Mara? Whatever you think you know about this court, about me, about what's happening, you're wrong. But if you want to live long enough to figure out the truth, you'll do exactly what I say. The council met in a room Mara had never seen before, all dark wood and tactical maps, built for war planning rather than politics. She sat in the corner, technically present, but clearly not welcome. The council members kept shooting her looks ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. There were 8 of them, all wolves, all dressed in various combinations of armor and formal wear. Ronan stood at the head of the table. He'd changed again, now wearing what looked like battle dress, leather and metal, functional and frightening. 3 assassination attempts, he said without preamble, all targeting the human. I want to know who, why, and how they got past palace security. A woman with white hair and scars like tally marks on her arms spoke first. With respect, Your Majesty, the why is obvious. She's human, unbonded, and you've claimed her under your personal protection during claiming season. Every dominant in the palace sees her as either an insult or a threat. Lady Moira speaks truth, added a man with a voice like grinding stone. The girl has no place here. Send her back to her village. Problem solved. No. The flat refusal hung in the air. Your Majesty, another council member began, we understand your interest, but surely you can see this is escalating into, I said no. Ronan's eyes swept the table. Mara Vance is under my protection. That protection is absolute. Anyone who violates it violates me. Is that unclear? Silence. Good. Cassian, findings? Cassian stood, unrolling a piece of parchment. All 3 attempts were different methods. Poison in the water basin, a guard who got lost and tried to access her room, and a servant with a knife who claimed she was delivering towels. He paused. None of them are talking, but they all have connections to noble houses currently in residence. Which houses? Ashcroft, Ravenswood, and Thorne. Vivian's house. Of course. Ronan's jaw tightened. Arrest the primary heirs from each house. Hold them for questioning. Your Majesty, that's an attack on someone under my protection is an attack on the crown. They'll be released when I'm satisfied they weren't involved. Until then, they can contemplate their choices from a cell. The council erupted into argument. Mara watched Ronan weather it, the protests, the accusations of overreach, the barely veiled suggestions that he was being controlled by a human woman. He heard all of it and dismissed every word. We're done here, he said finally. Council adjourned. They filed out, throwing dark looks at both Ronan and Mara. Lady Moira paused at the door. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. When they were alone, Ronan sat down heavily in his chair. For the first time since Mara had met him, he looked tired. Why are you doing this? She asked. Doing what? Protecting me. You could have let them kill me, solved all your problems. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you know what a recognition bond is? No. It's rare. Once in a generation rare. When a wolf meets their true mate, there's a pull. An instinct that bypasses logic and goes straight to something primal. His eyes met hers. I've never felt it before. Never believed it was real. But when you walked into that hall, when you got close enough for me to sense you properly, Mara's heart hammered. I'm human. I know. That's impossible. I know that too. He stood, running a hand through his hair. But impossible or not, something in me recognized something in you. And now I can't. He stopped. You're in danger because of me, because my wolf has decided you're worth protecting, and the court can sense it. They see weakness, opportunity, a human who might have power over the Alpha King. I don't have power over you. Don't you? He stepped closer. You hit me, in front of everyone, and I let you live. You insult my rule, question my decisions, make enemies of the most powerful families in the kingdom, and I keep you safe.
If that's not power, I don't know what is. The truth of it settled over Mara like a weight. She was in a palace full of predators. She'd made herself visible, made herself a target. And the only thing keeping her alive was the inexplicable interest of a king who couldn't explain why he cared. So what happens now? Now, Ronan's smile was grim. Now we see who's bold enough to come for you despite my warnings. And when they do, his eyes flashed gold. We make an example that no one will forget. 3 days until the full moon. Mara learned the palace by necessity, mapping exits and guard rotations like her life depended on it. Because it did. Ronan's quarters were exactly as secure as he'd claimed. She had her own room, connected to his by a door that stayed locked but not guarded, and her own bathroom with water that ran hot whenever she wanted. It should have felt like luxury. It felt like a cage. The whispers started immediately. She could hear them when she walked the corridors, servants going quiet when she passed, nobles exchanging glances, guards watching her with expressions she couldn't read. The human who struck the king, the human he protects, the human who thinks she's special. On the second day, she found a note slipped under her door. Leave before the full moon or die like the animal you are. She brought it to Ronan. He read it once, jaw tight, then burned it in the fireplace. Cassian's investigating. That's it? Someone threatens to kill me and you're investigating? What do you want me to do? Lock down the entire palace. We'd need proof before... Before what? Before I'm actually dead? His eyes flashed. You think I'm not taking this seriously? I think you're playing politics while people are planning my murder. And you think showing fear will help? You think backing down will make them respect you? He crossed to her, his presence overwhelming. You wanted to be here. You demanded an audience. You made yourself visible. Now you have to be strong enough to survive the consequences. I didn't ask for any of this. No. You asked to change a system that's been in place for centuries. Did you think that would be easy? Did you think they'd just listen and say, oh, the human's right, let's fix everything? Mara's hands clenched. So what, I just wait around to die? You survive. You adapt. You prove you're worth the protection I'm offering. His voice dropped. Or you run. Go back to Ashford. Disappear. I'll make sure you get there safely. The offer hung between them. It would be so easy. Go home. Pretend none of this happened. Live quietly and hope the tribute collectors were kinder next time. No. Ronan's expression shifted. No? I didn't come here to run. She met his eyes. And I didn't come here to play nice. If they want me dead, they can try. But I'm not leaving. Something in his face softened, just for a moment. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably. But at least I'll go down fighting. He shook his head, but there was something almost like respect in his eyes. You're insane. So you keep saying. The full moon rose on the third night. Mara felt it before she saw it, a strange electricity in the air, a tension that made her skin prickle. The palace changed. Guards moved differently. Servants rushed through their duties and disappeared. Even the shadows seemed darker. Ronan found her standing at her window, watching the moon climb. You should be inside. Locked doors. Why? Because during the full moon, control becomes difficult, especially for unmated dominance. He stood beside her, his own eyes fixed on the moon. The bond I feel toward you, it's stronger tonight, more insistent, and I'm the Alpha King. I've had centuries of practice maintaining control. The others haven't. Centuries? He glanced at her. Did I forget to mention I'm 347 years old? That would have been good information earlier. Would it have changed anything? Probably not. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then it vanished. Stay in your room tonight, please. Don't give anyone an excuse. She nodded. He turned to leave, then paused. Mara? For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't run. Then he was gone. Mara locked her door, drew the curtains, sat on her bed and tried to ignore the howling that started an hour after moonrise. It wasn't like wolf howls from back home. This was deeper, layered, the sound of dozens of voices harmonizing in something that was part song, part challenge, part pure wild abandon. She tried to sleep, couldn't. The crash came at midnight, glass shattering, wood splintering, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor in the next room. Mara was on her feet instantly, heart racing. She grabbed the iron poker from her fireplace, the only weapon she had, and pressed herself against the wall. Silence. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The connecting door between her room and Ronan's exploded inward. The figure in the doorway was massive, 7 feet tall, covered in fur, all muscle and teeth and glowing eyes. Not quite wolf, not quite human. Something in between and worse than both. It spoke, the voice distorted but recognizable. "You don't belong here." Vivian, or what Vivian became under the full moon. Mara raised the poker. Her hand shook. Ronan said, "Ronan isn't here." Vivian stepped into the room, moving with predatory grace. And his protection means nothing if you're dead before he arrives. If you kill me, he'll what? Execute a noble daughter during claiming season? Start a civil war over a human? Vivian's laugh was all wolf. He might care, little candlemaker, but not enough to burn his kingdom down for you. She lunged. Mara swung the poker. It connected with Vivian's shoulder, a solid hit that would have dropped a human. Vivian barely flinched. Her clawed hand caught Mara's wrist and squeezed. The poker clattered to the floor. Pain exploded up Mara's arm. "I'm going to make this slow," Vivian breathed, "so you understand what happens when humans forget their place." Then she was flying backward. Ronan hit her like a battering ram, full shift, massive, black fur, and silver eyes, an absolute fury. They crashed through the wall into the hallway, a tangle of claws and teeth and violence. Mara stumbled back, cradling her wrist. She could hear them fighting, snarls, impacts, the sound of flesh tearing, then silence. Ronan appeared in the doorway, still shifted, still massive, covered in blood that wasn't his. His eyes found Mara, and something in them was almost human. He shifted back. The process was fluid, terrifying, beautiful. Fur receding, bones restructuring, until he stood there in torn clothes with Vivian's blood on his hands. "Are you hurt?" Mara nodded at her wrist. I know." He crossed to her, taking her injured arm with surprising gentleness. His fingers probed the damage. "Sprained, not broken. You're lucky." "Lucky," she repeated numbly. "She tried to kill me." "Yes." "In your quarters, through a wall." "Yes." "And you—" She looked past him. Vivian's body lay in the hallway, very still. "Is she—" "Unconscious. She'll live to stand trial." His eyes met hers. "This is what I meant, Mara. This is what you're up against. They will kill you if given the chance, and I can't always be there to stop them." "Then teach me." He blinked. "What?" "Teach me to fight, to survive. You said I needed to adapt. Fine. Help me adapt. You're human. I'm aware. You can't shift. You're smaller, weaker, slower. Then I'll have to be smarter." She pulled her arm back, ignoring the pain. "I'm not running, Ronan, and I'm not dying quietly, so either help me or get out of my way." He stared at her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. A real smile, warm and surprised and almost proud. "Training starts at dawn," he said. "Try not to die before then." Dawn came too early and with too much pain. Mara's wrist throbbed where Vivian had grabbed it, the bruises already turning purple-black. Every movement sent sharp reminders through her arm that she was fragile, breakable, human in a palace full of predators. She was lacing her boots. The palace had provided her with actual training clothes, leather pants, and a fitted shirt that didn't restrict movement. When Ronan knocked once and entered without waiting for permission, he looked like he hadn't slept. Still wearing the torn clothes from last night, dried blood flaking off his forearms, but his eyes were sharp, alert, tracking her movements like he was cataloging injuries. "How's the wrist?" "Hurts." "Good. Pain means you're paying attention." He tossed something at her. She caught it one-handed, a leather brace. "Wrap it. We're not postponing because you're injured. You'll train injured or you'll die injured. Your choice." Mara bit back a dozen responses and wrapped the brace around her wrist. It helped. Not much, but enough. "Where's Vivian?" "In a cell." Where she'll stay until the council decides her fate. His jaw tightened. Which won't be execution before you ask. Noble daughters don't hang for attempted murder. They pay fines, issue apologies, get sent home in disgrace. That's it? That's politics. He moved toward the door. Come on. Cassian's waiting. The training yard was in the palace's lower levels, carved out of stone and lit by torches that never seemed to burn down. It was early enough that they had the space to themselves, just Mara, Ronan, and Cassian, who looked far too cheerful for someone about to watch a human get destroyed. Morning, Miss Vance? Sleep well? Someone tried to kill me through a wall. Right, heard about that. He spun a wooden practice sword in his hand, the movement casual and expert.
So, basic assessment first. You ever been in a real fight? Define real. Someone trying to hurt you, not arguing with your father about curfew. Mara thought about the collectors in Ashford, about the moment she'd slapped Ronan. Once or twice. And how'd that work out? I'm still alive. Cassian grinned. Good answer. All right, come at me. Try to hit me. Just like that? Just like that. Mara moved. She wasn't entirely sure what she was doing, some instinct that said go low, aim for the knees, but Cassian sidestepped like she was moving through honey and tapped her shoulder with the practice sword. Dead. Again. She tried again, faster this time, aiming high, then pivoting low at the last second. He blocked with the sword, hooked her ankle with his foot, and sent her sprawling. Dead. Seeing a pattern, Mara pushed herself up, ignoring the way her wrist screamed. You're faster. I'm a wolf. Of course I'm faster. Also stronger, better reflexes, better hearing. Cassian crouched down to her level. You will never beat a wolf in a straight fight. Ever. So we're not teaching you to fight fair. We're teaching you to survive. Ronan spoke from where he leaned against the wall. Wolves have advantages, but we also have predictable patterns. We rely on strength and speed because they usually work. Most wolves have been fighting the same way for decades. Centuries in some cases. They get comfortable, sloppy. And sloppy gets you killed, Cassian added. So, first lesson, never do what they expect. The next 3 hours were brutal. Cassian didn't hold back. Every time Mara made a mistake, she paid for it with bruises. He taught her dirty fighting, eye strikes, throat jabs, how to use an opponent's momentum against them, how to create space, how to run, how to survive long enough for help to arrive. You're not trying to win, he repeated for the 100th time. You're trying to not die. Big difference. Ronan watched most of it in silence, occasionally calling out corrections, but there was something in the way he watched, intense, focused, that made Mara hyper-aware of every mistake, every failure. Finally, Cassian called a break. Mara collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Everything hurt. Her wrist, her ribs, her pride. Ronan appeared with a water skin. Drink. She did. The water was cold, clean, and she nearly drained the entire thing. You're doing well, she laughed. It came out bitter. I haven't landed a single hit. You're still standing. That's what matters. He settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. Wolves ran hot. She was learning that. Cassian's one of the best fighters in the kingdom. If you could beat him after 3 hours, I'd be worried about him. How long until I can actually defend myself? Against a human? Few months. Against a wolf? He paused. Years. Maybe never. Encouraging. I'm not here to encourage you. I'm here to keep you alive. His voice dropped. The trial's in 2 days. Mara's head snapped up. What trial? Vivian's. She attacked someone under royal protection. The council's demanding a formal judgment. His expression was grim. And they're calling for you to testify. Why do I feel like that's a trap? Because it is. The council chamber was packed. Mara had thought the grand hall was intimidating. That was before she saw the entire wolf nobility crammed into a space designed for judgment and spectacle. Tiered seating rose on 3 sides, every seat filled with nobles wearing house colors and expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. At the center of the floor stood a cage, iron, heavy, built to hold something dangerous. Vivienne was already inside. She looked different than she had at dinner,
less polished. Her blonde hair was tangled, her dress torn from the fight, and her eyes, when they met Mara's, burned with pure hatred. Ronan sat on a throne at the head of the chamber, elevated above everyone else. The symbolism wasn't subtle. This was his court, his judgment. But the way the council members flanked him, the way they whispered among themselves, Mara could see the truth. He might be king, but they held power here too. Lady Moira stood, her scarred arms crossed. The accused is Lady Vivian Ashcroft, daughter of Duke Ashcroft, charged with attempted murder of a person under royal protection. How does the accused plead? Vivian's voice was steady. Guilty of defending my king from manipulation. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. That's not a plea, Cassian said from his position beside the throne. Guilty or not guilty? Guilty of what I did, not guilty of the crime. Vivian's eyes found Mara. She's human, unbonded. She has no right to be here, and everyone in this room knows it. If the king won't remove her, someone has to. The murmurs grew louder. Agreement mostly. Mara felt the weight of every stare in the room. Ronan's voice cut through the noise. The right to be here is mine to grant, and I granted it. You granted protection to a human during claiming season. Lord Ashcroft stood, an older man, gray-haired, with Vivian's sharp features. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but that decision has implications. The court needs clarity. Is this human your chosen mate? Silence. Absolute and suffocating. Mara's heart stopped. She hadn't even hadn't thought about what his protection actually meant beyond staying alive. Ronan's expression gave nothing away. Miss Vance is under my protection. That's all the court needs to know. With respect, Your Majesty, it's not. Lady Moira's voice was firm. If she's a potential mate, that changes everything. Every unwed wolf in this room has traveled here hoping for the chance to bond with alpha blood. If you've already made your choice, if you're bond forming with a human, the noble houses deserve to know. I haven't made any choice. Then what is she? What is any of us? Ronan leaned forward. She's a person under my protection who was attacked in my own palace. Whether she's human or wolf doesn't change the crime. Lord Ashcroft's expression hardened. But it changes the punishment. My daughter acted rashly, yes, but she acted out of concern for the kingdom, for tradition, for the natural order that has kept our people strong for thousands of years. He turned to address the room. Humans are not our equals. They never have been. They serve, we protect. That's the contract. The moment we forget that, the moment we elevate them beyond their station, we invite chaos. Applause. Not from everyone, but from enough people that it echoed. Mara's hands clenched. Every word was a knife, sharp and precise. And the worst part was seeing the faces in the crowd, seeing agreement, seeing fear, seeing the absolute certainty that she was less. If I may speak, you may not, Lady Moira cut her off. This is a council matter. Humans don't have voice in council proceedings. She's the victim, Cassian protested. She's the cause, someone shouted from the crowd. More voices joined in. Accusations, questions, demands that Mara be removed, sent away, put back in her place. Ronan stood. The chamber went quiet. Enough. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried absolute authority. Lady Vivian attacked someone under my direct protection. The law is clear. She forfeits her claim to nobility and faces exile or execution. Lord Ashcroft went pale. Your Majesty, please. However, Ronan's eyes swept the chamber. The council has raised valid concerns about precedent, about what my protection of a human means for our traditions. He paused. So I'm offering a compromise, trial by combat. The room erupted. Mara's blood ran cold. What? Ancient law, Lady Moira said, and there was something almost satisfied in her voice. In cases where guilt is clear but punishment is disputed, the accused may demand trial by combat. If they survive, they're pardoned. Survive against what? Mara asked, but she already knew. Ronan's expression was carved from stone. The judgment wolf. The floor opened. Actually opened. Stone panels sliding back to reveal a pit below the chamber. And from that darkness came sound. Not howling. Something worse. a wet, rattling growl that raised every hair on Mara's body. The judgment wolf, Ronan continued, his voice tight, is an ancient construct, created to test the guilty. It cannot be killed, cannot be bargained with, and has never failed to complete its purpose. If Lady Vivian survives 5 minutes in the arena with it, she walks free. And if she doesn't, someone called out, then justice is served. Lord Ashcroft looked like he'd been struck. Your Majesty, my daughter is a trained fighter, but that creature is the law, Lady Moira finished. Your daughter demanded trial by combat. She knew the terms. I didn't. Vivian's face had gone white. I didn't demand anything. You claimed innocence through service to the kingdom. That's the same as demanding trial. Moira's smile was cold. The law is the law. The creature that emerged from the pit wasn't a wolf. It was something older, twisted, wrong. Twice the size of any wolf Mara had seen, with fur that looked like it had been burned and healed wrong, eyes that glowed with sick yellow light, and teeth, too many teeth, all of them too long. It moved into the cage with Vivian with deliberate predatory patience. Vivian shifted. The transformation was fast, desperate, turning her into the half-wolf form Mara had seen during their fight. Claws, fangs, muscle. The judgment wolf looked at her and laughed. The sound was human and horrible. Then it attacked. The fight lasted 90 seconds. Vivian fought well. Better than well. She was fast, skilled, using the cage as leverage to launch herself at angles the creature couldn't predict. She landed hits that would have killed a normal wolf. The judgment wolf didn't care. It caught her mid-leap, jaws closing around her shoulder. The snap of bone was audible even over the crowd's gasps. Vivian screamed. The creature dropped her, stepped back, waited. Stop this, Mara heard herself say. Stop it. She's done. She has 4 minutes left, Lady Moira said calmly. The trial isn't complete. Vivian tried to stand. Fell. Her arm hung at a wrong angle, blood pooling beneath her. The judgment wolf circled, taking its time. Please, Lord Ashcroft's voice cracked. Your Majesty, please. Ronan's expression was blank, but his hands gripped the armrests hard enough that the wood cracked. The creature lunged again. Mara moved without thinking. She jumped the railing, separating the seating from the arena floor, hit the ground hard enough to make her ankles scream, and ran toward the cage. Mara, no! Ronan's shout was distant, unimportant. She grabbed the iron bars. They were hot, burning her palms, but she held on. Hey, over here! The judgment wolf stopped. Its massive head swiveled toward her, and its yellow eyes recognized something. The chamber went silent. Even Vivian's whimpering faded into background noise. The creature moved toward Mara, not attacking, walking, each step deliberate, measured, like it was approaching something sacred. It reached the bars, lowered its head, and bowed. Mara's mind went blank. This wasn't possible. This wasn't impossible, someone whispered. Then louder, that's impossible. The judgment wolf pressed its forehead against the bars where Mara's hands rested. A sound rumbled from its chest, not a growl, almost a purr. Recognition. Submission. Ronan was suddenly there, pulling her back from the cage. Get away from it! But the creature didn't react to him. Its eyes stayed locked on Mara, and that same rumbling sound continued. Lady Moira stood, her face pale. That cannot happen. The judgment wolf doesn't submit. It's bound to serve justice, not what? Cassian's voice was sharp. Not recognize someone? Recognize what? She's human. Is she? Lord Ashcroft was staring at Mara like she'd grown a second head. Because that creature only submits to one thing, alpha blood, pure, undiluted, royal alpha blood. The chamber exploded into chaos. Accusations flew. Theories, questions. Through it all, Mara stood frozen, Ronan's hands on her shoulders, and the judgment wolf watching her with something that looked almost like loyalty. This is absurd, Lady Moira was saying. She's human. We all saw her arrive. She has no wolf blood, no pack ties, no... The judgment wolf doesn't lie. Cassian's voice cut through. It can't. It's bound to truth. Then what is she? All eyes turned to Mara. She had no answer, no explanation. She was human. She'd always been human. Her parents were human. Her grandparents. Everyone in Ashford was human, weren't they? Ronan's grip tightened on her shoulders. When he spoke, his voice was strained. Clear the chamber. Council only. Everyone else out. Now. The crowd protested but obeyed. Slowly, reluctantly, they filed out, throwing backward glances at Mara and the creature that had stopped attacking to bow at her feet. When only the council remained, Ronan finally spoke. Someone explain this. Now. Lady Moira approached the cage slowly. The judgment wolf tracked her but didn't move from its position. There are old stories, legends, about bloodlines that went into hiding, about alpha families who chose to live as human rather than face extinction during the Purge Wars. She turned to Mara. How much do you know about your family history? My parents were candle makers. Their parents were farmers. We're frontier people. We've always been frontier people. And before that? Mara opened her mouth, closed it. I don't know. The Purge Wars were 300 years ago, Cassian said quietly. Plenty of time for bloodlines to get buried, forgotten. But she can't shift, Lord Ashcroft protested. If she had alpha blood, even dormant, she'd still be able to shift. Not if the bloodline's been human for generations. Not if it's diluted enough. Lady Moira's eyes were calculating. But the blood remembers. The wolf remembers. And the judgment wolf, she gestured at the creature, recognizes what's there, even if we can't see it. Ronan's hands dropped from Mara's shoulders. When she turned to look at him, his expression was unreadable. This changes nothing, he said flatly. Your Majesty, this changes everything. Lady Moira's voice was urgent. If she has alpha blood, if there's even a possibility, she can't be dismissed as just some human. She has a legitimate claim to what? A throne she can't defend? A title she can't use? Ronan's voice was hard. She still can't shift, still can't fight like we do. And now, thanks to this display, every ambitious wolf in the kingdom is going to see her as either a threat or an opportunity. He was right. Mara could see it in the council's faces, the calculations happening behind their eyes. The trial's over, Ronan continued. Lady Vivian is pardoned based on extenuating circumstances. The judgment wolf has made its decision. As for Miss Vance, he looked at her, and something in his eyes was almost apologetic. She remains under my protection, and the council will investigate her bloodline quietly. No public announcements until we have proof. Your Majesty, that's an order. The council bowed, reluctantly. They filed out, leaving Mara, Ronan, Cassian, and the judgment wolf in the massive chamber. The creature was still watching Mara, still bowed. What do I do? She asked quietly. About what? About... She gestured helplessly at the wolf. That. Ronan approached the cage. The judgment wolf's eyes tracked him, but didn't react aggressively. It recognized something in you. Old blood, royal blood, whether that makes you wolf or just descended from wolves, I don't know. He reached through the bars, placed a hand on the creature's massive head. But it won't hurt you, ever, ever. You've been marked as protected by something older than me, older than this kingdom. The creature rumbled agreement. Mara's legs felt weak. She sat down hard on the stone floor. I don't understand any of this. Join the club. Cassian leaned against the wall. But Ronan's right about one thing. This makes you more dangerous, not less. Before, you were just a human who'd caught the king's interest. Annoying, but manageable. Now? He shook his head. Now you're a potential alpha. A threat to bloodlines that have ruled for centuries. They'll either try to control you or kill you. Probably both. Great. So nothing's changed except now I have even more people trying to murder me. Welcome to wolf politics, Ronan said. There was dark humor in his voice. It's exactly as terrible as it looks. They returned to the palace proper through underground corridors. Ronan dismissed Cassian with a gesture, leaving just the two of them walking through stone passages lit by torches that never quite fought off the dark. You knew, Mara said finally. Ronan didn't pretend to misunderstand. I suspected. The recognition bond. It's supposed to be between wolves. When I felt it with you, I thought it was impossible, broken, some kind of mistake. He paused at an intersection, choosing the left path. But the judgment wolf doesn't make mistakes. So what am I? That's the question everyone's going to be asking. They emerged into a section of the palace Mara hadn't seen before. Older, with walls that looked like they'd been standing since before the kingdom had a name. But whatever you are, you're not safe. The council will investigate, yes, but they'll also leak information, spread rumors. By tomorrow morning, the entire capital will know something happened during Vivian's trial. Can you stop them? I can try, but information spreads like fire here. Once it starts, all you can do is manage the damage. They stopped outside a heavy wooden door. Ronan produced a key, actual metal, worn smooth with age, and unlocked it. Where are we? The old archives. If there's proof of your bloodline, it'll be here. Records go back 1,000 years. He pushed the door open, revealing a room full of shelves, scrolls, books bound in leather, and what looked like human skin. I need to search. You should rest. Tomorrow's going to be, I'm helping. He turned. Mara, it's my bloodline. I'm helping. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then he nodded. All right. But if we find something, if there's proof you're descended from alpha blood, you need to understand what that means. It means you're a pawn in a game you don't understand. It means every family in the kingdom will try to use you, marry you off, control you, kill you if they can't. Sounds familiar? His mouth quirked. You really don't know how to back down, do you? Not really. It's going to get you killed. Probably. They stared at each other in the dim light. Mara was acutely aware of how close he was, how the torchlight caught the sharp angles of his face, how his eyes weren't quite human even in his human form. Why are you helping me? She asked. Really? Not because of some recognition bond or political advantage. Why? Ronan was quiet for a long moment, then, because you're the first person in 3 centuries who's looked at me and seen something other than a king. You see a man making mistakes, making bad choices, and you're not afraid to call me on it. He reached out, fingers brushing her uninjured wrist. And because when I'm near you, something in me that's been dormant for longer than I can remember wakes up. And I don't know if that's the bond or something else, but I know I'm not ready to let you go. The words hung between them, raw, honest, dangerous. Mara's breath caught. Ronan. The door exploded inward. Guards poured in, a dozen of them, wearing house colors Mara didn't recognize. Not palace guards, private soldiers. Ronan moved to shield her, already shifting, but something was wrong. He stumbled, his shift incomplete, leaving him caught between forms and vulnerable. Wolfsbane, one of the guards said, holding up a vial. In the torch oil. You've been breathing it for the last 5 minutes. Mara's mind raced. Wolfsbane, a poison that paralyzed wolves, made them weak, made them human. The lead guard grabbed her arm, yanking her away from Ronan. The council wants her alive. The king's protection ends when he can't enforce it. Touch her and I'll... Ronan's threat dissolved into a snarl of pain as another guard hit him with something that crackled with electricity. You'll what, Your Majesty? You can barely stand. They dragged Mara toward the door. She fought, kicking, biting, everything Cassian had taught her. But there were too many, all of them stronger. The last thing she saw before they pulled her into the corridor was Ronan on the floor, bleeding, trying to stand and failing. Then a bag went over her head, and the world went dark. The bag came off and light stabbed into Mara's eyes. She was in a cellar. Stone walls slick with moisture, no windows, a single torch providing dim illumination. The smell hit her next, rot and old blood, and something chemical that made her throat close up. 3 figures stood in front of her, Lady Moira, Lord Ashcroft, and a third person she didn't recognize, a man with silver hair and eyes so pale they looked white. Apologies for the rough treatment, Lady Moira said. She didn't sound apologetic. But you've become complicated. Mara's hands were bound behind her back, the rope tight enough to cut circulation. Her wrist throbbed where Vivian had injured it. Ronan is currently unconscious in the old archives, being tended to by healers we control. The silver-haired man spoke with an accent Mara couldn't place. He'll recover, eventually, by which time this will be resolved. Who are you? Magnus Thorne, head of House Thorne, and more relevantly, the council's strategic advisor. He circled her slowly. You've created quite the disruption, Miss Vance. Or should I say, he paused, we're not actually sure what to call you, are we? Human? Wolf? Something in between. The Judgment Wolf recognized alpha blood, Lord Ashcroft said. His earlier grief over Vivian had been replaced by cold calculation, which means she's either descended from a royal line we don't know about, or she's something else entirely. The third option, Magnus continued, is that someone's been manipulating bloodlines, breeding experiments, trying to create hybrids that could bypass our traditional power structures. His pale eyes fixed on Mara. So, which is it? Are you a lost heir or a manufactured weapon? I'm a candle maker from Ashford, Lady Moira laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. You were, but that woman died the moment you entered the capital, the moment you caught the king's attention. Now you're either a threat or a tool. We're here to determine which. Magnus produced a knife, long, silver, with symbols etched into the blade that looked like they predated language. Mara's heart rate spiked. What are you doing? Blood tells stories. He grabbed her bound hands, turning her palm up. Old blood especially. If you're truly descended from alpha lines, your blood will react to silver. If you're human pretending to be special, the knife pressed against her palm. This will hurt significantly more. The cut was quick, clinical, deep enough to bleed but not cripple. Pain flared white-hot up Mara's arm. Her blood hit the stone floor and burned. Not metaphorically. Actually burned. Smoke rising, the stone beneath hissing like she'd poured acid instead of blood. All three council members stepped back. Impossible, Lord Ashcroft breathed. Not impossible, just very, very rare. Magnus stared at the smoking blood like it was a puzzle he couldn't solve. That's not dormant alpha blood. That's something older, pure. His eyes snapped to Mara's face. What are you? I don't know. The words came out sharp, desperate. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what I am. I came here to stop my village from starving, and now everyone keeps acting like I'm some kind of miracle, Lady Moira finished, or catastrophe, depending on your perspective. Magnus wiped the knife clean, his movements precise. Here's what we know. You have blood that shouldn't exist in a human. You triggered a recognition bond with the Alpha King. The Judgment Wolf submitted to you. And now 3 separate bloodline tests have confirmed you carry markers from the Kyle royal line. Mara's breath caught. That's impossible, yes. We've established that impossible is relative where you're concerned. He sheathed the knife. The question is what to do about it. Ronan wants to protect you, which is admirable but politically naive. You're too valuable to simply protect. You're leverage, a wild card, and in the wrong hands, his smile was thin. You could start a war. Or end one, Lord Ashcroft said quietly. If she's truly Kyle blood, even a distant branch, she could legitimize claims that have been disputed for centuries. Marriages, alliances, land rights. She could also destabilize everything, Lady Moira countered. A human with alpha blood undermines every hierarchy we've built, every law that keeps wolves superior. If she exists, what else might exist? How many other bloodlines are hiding in plain sight? They were talking about her like she wasn't there, like she was a thing to be managed rather than a person. Mara tested the ropes. Tight, too tight. Her injured wrist screamed protest, but she kept working at them anyway. The solution, Magnus said, is relatively simple. We marry her off to a controllable house, someone loyal to the council. The bloodline gets absorbed into an established family, she disappears into the countryside, and the problem resolves itself. And if she refuses? Mara asked. You won't, because the alternative is execution for conspiracy against the crown. We have evidence you've been working with foreign agents to destabilize the kingdom. That's a lie. Is it? Who would know? You're a nobody from a frontier village. We could claim anything, and by the time Ronan recovers enough to investigate, Magnus shrugged. It'll be too late. The ropes gave. Just slightly, but enough. Mara kept her expression neutral while her fingers worked the knot. Cassian's voice echoed in her head. Never do what they expect. So what now? She asked, keeping them talking. You parade me in front of eligible bachelors and auction me off? Something like that, though we prefer to think of it as strategic placement. Lady Moira moved closer. You'll marry Lord Brennan of House Ravenswood. He's loyal, manageable, and desperate enough for status that he'll overlook your origins. The wedding happens in 3 days. After that, you disappear to his estate in the Southern Territories and live out your life in comfortable obscurity. And if I say no? Then you have an unfortunate accident, fall down some stairs, eat poisoned food. The capital can be so dangerous for humans who don't know their place. The rope came loose. Mara kept her hands behind her back, maintaining the illusion. Her mind raced through everything Cassian had taught her. She couldn't fight 3 trained wolves, but she could create chaos. Could survive long enough for what? Ronan was unconscious. The guards were compromised. She was alone in a cellar with 3 people who wanted her dead or controlled. She needed an advantage. Her eyes found the torch on the wall. Fire. Wolves hated fire. Instinct ran deeper than logic. Can I at least think about it? Magnus smiled. No. You'll agree now, or... Mara lunged sideways, grabbing the torch with her freed hands. The sudden movement made her wrist scream, but she ignored it, spinning and throwing the torch at the oil lamp hanging from the ceiling. Glass shattered. Oil ignited. Fire bloomed across the ceiling like a living thing. The wolves reacted instantly, shifting, snarling, moving away from the flames. Exactly what she'd counted on. Mara ran. The cellar had 1 exit. She hit the stairs at full speed, taking them 2 at a time. Behind her, she heard shouting, the sound of pursuit. The door at the top was locked. She slammed her shoulder into it. Pain exploded down her arm. The door didn't budge. Footsteps on the stairs, getting closer. Mara looked around desperately. The corridor beyond was visible through a gap in the doorframe. She could see torches, shadows, what might be another exit. The knife. Magnus's knife. She'd grabbed it when she took the torch. She jammed it into the door lock, twisting, praying to anything that might be listening. The lock broke. She burst through into the corridor, turned left because right looked darker, and ran straight into someone coming the other way. They both went down hard. Ow! Mara? Cassian, bruised, bleeding from a cut above his eye, but alive and solid, and the best thing she'd seen in hours. They took you. I've been searching. He pulled her up. Are you hurt? Later. Run now. They ran. The palace was chaos. Whatever the council had planned, it wasn't subtle. Guards in house colors fought palace guards in corridors. Servants fled screaming. Somewhere, something was burning. Mara could smell smoke that wasn't from her torch. What's happening? She gasped as they rounded another corner. Coup attempt. 3 houses moved simultaneously. Ashcroft, Thorne, and Ravenswood. They have most of the East Wing and they're pushing toward the throne room. Cassian kicked open a door, pulled her into a servant's passage. Ronan's recovering, but he's weak. We need to get you somewhere safe. No. He stopped. What? I'm not hiding, not anymore. Her jaw set. They want me dead or controlled because they're scared, because I'm proof their whole system is cracked. So let's crack it wider. Mara, where's the judgment wolf? Cassian blinked. What? The creature. Where is it? Still in the trial chamber. Why? His eyes widened. No, absolutely not. That thing is barely controlled on a good day. If you let it loose in the palace, it submitted to me. It recognized something. Mara grabbed his arm. Magnus said I could start a war, so let's give them one they can't win. He stared at her. Then, incredibly, he grinned. You're insane. So I keep hearing, Ronan's going to kill me. Only if we survive long enough. The trial chamber was abandoned. Whatever guards had been stationed there had fled when the fighting started. The iron cage still stood in the center, and inside it, the judgment wolf waited. It lifted its massive head when Mara entered. Those yellow eyes tracked her across the floor with eerie intelligence. Can you open it? She asked Cassian. Technically, yes. The emergency release is... He hesitated. This is a really bad idea. All my ideas are bad. That's why they work. He pulled a lever on the wall. The cage door swung open with a rusty groan. The judgment wolf emerged slowly. It was even more terrifying outside the cage, all wrong proportions and too many teeth and eyes that burned with something that wasn't quite animal. It walked straight to Mara, lowered its head, waited. Mara's hand was shaking when she placed it on the creature's skull. The bone was warm, almost hot. Up close, she could see scars beneath the matted fur, marks that looked like they'd been burned there deliberately. "Can you understand me?" The rumble that came from its chest might have been agreement. "The people who created you, who bound you to serve judgment, they're trying to kill me." She met those yellow eyes. "I need your help." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the judgment wolf lowered itself to the ground, presenting its back. An invitation. "Oh, you have got to be kidding," Cassian muttered. Mara climbed on. The fur was coarse under her hands, the muscles beneath like steel cables. She'd never ridden anything before. Ashford didn't have horses, but instinct kicked in. She gripped with her knees, fingers tangling in the thick ruff at the creature's neck. The judgment wolf stood. Mara held on. "Where to?" Cassian asked, weapons drawn. "The throne room." "Where else?" They moved through the palace like a nightmare made real. The judgment wolf didn't run. It stalked, deliberate and terrifying, and everywhere they went, people fled. Guards, nobles, anyone with sense. Those who stood their way didn't last long. House Ashcroft's soldiers blocked a corridor, 10 of them, armed, shifted into fighting form. The judgment wolf went through them like they were paper. Not killing. Mara could feel it holding back, following some internal code, but removing them from the fight with brutal efficiency. They left a trail of unconscious bodies and shattered armor. Cassian fought beside them, his movements precise and deadly. "You know," he called over the chaos, "when I said you needed to adapt, this isn't what I meant. You said never do what they expect. I also said try not to die." They burst through the throne room doors. The scene inside was frozen violence. Ronan stood at the center, still wearing torn clothes from the archives, blood running from a gash on his temple. He was surrounded by council forces, maybe 30 wolves, all shifted, all ready to tear him apart. At the edges of the room, palace guards fought to break through, but they were outnumbered. Lady Moira stood on the steps to the throne itself. "Yield, your majesty. You're weak, outnumbered, and out of options. Abdicate in favor of a council regency, and we'll let you live." Ronan's laugh was rough. "You really think I'd—" Then he saw Mara, saw her riding the judgment wolf like some nightmare cavalry, Cassian at her side, covered in blood that mostly wasn't hers. His expression went through several emotions too fast to track. "Told you she was insane," Cassian said cheerfully. The throne room went silent. Every wolf in the room stared at the judgment wolf, at the creature that wasn't supposed to serve anyone, that was supposed to be locked in the trial chamber, being ridden by the human who'd somehow survived everything they'd thrown at her. Mara slid off the wolf's back. Her legs nearly gave out, adrenaline crash hitting hard, but she locked her knees and stayed upright. "New offer," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. "Everyone who attacked the king surrenders now, or we find out what happens when I stop holding the judgment wolf back." "You can't control it," Magnus said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Can't I?" Mara placed her hand on the creature's head. "Want to test that theory?" The judgment wolf snarled. The sound filled the throne room, resonating in bones and teeth, an ancient hindbrain fear. 3 wolves shifted back to human immediately, hands raised in surrender, then 5 more, then a dozen. Lord Ashcroft was among the last. He looked between Mara and the creature, his face pale. "This isn't over." "Yes," Ronan said, his voice steady despite the blood. "It is." Palace guards poured through the now undefended doors. Within minutes, the council conspirators were in chains. Lady Moira fought to the end, literally, forcing Cassian to knock her unconscious, but eventually it was done. The throne room cleared until it was just Mara, Ronan, Cassian, and the judgment wolf. Ronan crossed to her. Up close, she could see how exhausted he was. The wolfsbane had taken more out of him than he was admitting. "You rode the judgment wolf into battle. It seemed like a good idea at the time. You could have died." "I was going to die anyway. This way was more dramatic." His mouth twitched despite everything. Then his expression sobered. "They tried to force you into marriage. Kill you if you refused." "I know, I was there." "And you escaped, by yourself." Cassian helped. "After you'd already freed yourself, grabbed a weapon, set a fire, and broken a locked door." Ronan shook his head slowly. "You're full of surprises." So everyone keeps telling me. He reached out, fingers gentle on her injured wrist. We need to get you to a healer, and then, he paused, and then we need to talk about what you are, what that means. What do you think I am? His eyes met hers. In them she saw exhaustion, respect, and something else, something that made her pulse quicken. I think you're someone who just changed everything. The healers did what they could for Mara's wrist, rewrapping it, giving her something for the pain that tasted like dirt and made her tongue numb. The cut on her palm was cleaned and bandaged, though it still burned faintly whenever she moved her hand. Ronan had disappeared to deal with the aftermath of the coup attempt. Cassian had been pulled into guard duties, reorganizing security and rooting out any remaining conspirators, which left Mara alone in her room, the same room in the East Wing, though now with triple guards and wards that made the air shimmer, trying to process everything that had happened. She had alpha blood, old blood, blood that burned stone and made ancient creatures submit. But she still couldn't shift, still couldn't fight like they did, was still fundamentally human in all the ways that mattered. A knock at the door made her turn. Come in. Vivian entered. She looked different, humbled, maybe, or just exhausted. Her arm was in a sling from the Judgment Wolf's attack. She stopped just inside the doorway, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. I owe you an apology. Mara blinked. I'm sorry. I tried to kill you. You saved me anyway. Vivian's jaw worked. When you jumped into that arena, when you stopped the Judgment Wolf from finishing me, you could have let it happen. Should have. I would have. I'm not you. No, you're better. The words seemed to cost her. My father's been arrested. House Ashcroft is under investigation. Everything we built, everything we were, gone, because I was too proud to see what you actually were. And what's that? Vivian's smile was bitter. Someone who changes everything just by existing. My father called you a disruption. He was right, but disruptions aren't always bad. She moved to the window, looking out at the city. I grew up believing humans were lesser, that wolves were superior because we could shift, fight, survive, that the natural order placed us on top. And now? Now I've seen a human face down the Alpha King, ride the Judgment Wolf, survive a coup attempt by outsmarting people who should have crushed her. Vivian turned. You don't fight like us. You don't think like us. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we've been so busy being wolves we forgot there are other ways to be strong. The words hung in the air between them. What will you do now? Mara asked. Face trial. Probably exile if I'm lucky. If I'm not, she shrugged. Doesn't matter. What I wanted to say is thank you for showing mercy when I showed none. And, she hesitated, good luck. You're going to need it. She left before Mara could respond. The summons came at dawn. Full council meeting, mandatory attendance, emergency session. Mara dressed in the finest clothes the palace had given her, a deep blue gown that somehow made her look both regal and dangerous, and let the guards escort her to the council chamber. The room was packed. Every council member who'd survived the coup attempt, every major house representative, the entire throne room's worth of witnesses, and at the head of it all, Ronan sat on his throne, looking every inch the Alpha King. The exhaustion was hidden behind perfect composure, the wounds concealed by formal dress. Only his eyes showed the truth when they found Mara. Mara Vance, he said formally, approached the throne. She walked the length of the chamber. Every step felt weighted with significance. This was it. Whatever happened next would define everything that came after. She stopped 3 feet from the throne, met his eyes, refused to kneel. A murmur went through the crowd. Ronan stood. In his hands was a scroll, old parchment sealed with wax that bore the royal crest. Blood tests have been completed. Archives searched. Records verified. His voice carried absolute authority. The woman standing before us, known as Mara Vance of Ashford, has been confirmed as a direct descendant of the Kale royal line, specifically the Voss branch. Thought extinct for 300 years, but apparently very much alive. Shock rippled through the chamber. As such, Ronan continued, she carries legitimate claim to alpha blood and all rights associated with royal lineage. He paused. Which presents us with a situation without precedent. She cannot shift, cannot fight as we do. has lived her entire life as human. But by blood, by law, by the recognition of the judgment wolf itself, she is one of us. He descended from the throne, approached Mara, held out the scroll. The council has reached a decision. Here it comes, Mara thought. The trap, the condition, the way they'll control me after all. Mara Vance is hereby granted full status as nobility of House Kael, with all rights, protections, and responsibilities therein. Ronan's eyes never left hers. She may not be able to shift, but she has proven herself capable of survival, strategy, and strength of will. The blood may make her royal, but her actions make her worthy. He knelt. In front of everyone, the Alpha King, ruler of the territories, knelt before a human woman with alpha blood and no idea what she was doing. I pledge my protection, not as king to subject, but as equal to equal. The recognition bond between us is real, undeniable, and I will not hide it or diminish it to satisfy politics. The chamber erupted. Protests, shock. 3 council members stood and walked out immediately, but others remained. And slowly, so slowly, a few began to kneel. Cassian was first, dropping to one knee with a grin. All hail the woman who rides the judgment wolf. Then others, one by one. Not everyone. Maybe not even most. But enough. Enough to matter. Ronan stood, still holding her gaze. You changed everything. Might as well make it official. Mara's throat was tight. I don't know how to be nobility. Neither did I, at first. You'll learn. His smile was genuine. Or you'll burn it all down trying. Either way, it'll be interesting. Your Majesty, one of the remaining council members called out. If she's to be recognized as nobility, as Kael nobility, there are traditions. Ceremonies. A formal claiming, Can wait, Ronan cut him off. We've had enough ceremony for 1 week. Right now I'm ordering a full investigation into every house that participated in the coup. Assets frozen. Leadership under arrest. And anyone who wants to challenge my decision about Miss Vance, his eyes flashed gold, can take it up with the judgment wolf. That shut down the protests. The meeting dissolved into chaos, people arguing, planning, already recalculating their political positions in light of this new reality. Ronan took Mara's arm, guiding her out of the chamber before anyone could corner them. They ended up on a balcony overlooking the city. The sun was fully up now, burning off the morning fog. Kael's gate spread below them, all stone and steel and life continuing despite everything. That was terrifying, Mara said. Which part? All of it. The council. The announcement. You kneeling. She turned to face him. You didn't have to do that. Publicly acknowledge the bond. You could have just protected me quietly. I'm done hiding things that matter. His hand found hers, carefully, mindful of her injuries. The recognition bond is real. Whatever you are, human, wolf, something in between, my wolf has claimed you as mate, and I'm tired of fighting it. Ronan, I'm not asking you to accept it. Not yet. You've been through too much, too fast, but I want you to know. He paused, choosing words carefully. You're safe here. Not because of your blood or your connection to the judgment wolf or political advantage. You're safe because I will burn anyone who tries to hurt you. The intensity in his voice made her shiver, not from fear, something else. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. Be noble, navigate politics, deal with people who want me dead. Neither did I, 300 years ago. You learn by surviving, by making mistakes, by trusting the right people. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. And you don't have to do it alone. Below them, the city began its daily routines. Markets opening, people going to work, life continuing. Somewhere in Ashford, her father was probably worried sick. The village was still struggling with tribute demands. The frontier territories were still bleeding. But now Mara had a voice, had power, had the ear of a king, and the recognition of creatures older than memory. I want to change things, she said. Really change them. Not just survive, but make this kingdom better. I know. The tribute system, the way humans are treated, all of it. I know. It won't be easy. The council will fight me. Half the nobility will want me dead. Ronan's smile was fierce. Let them try. They stood together on the balcony, watching the sun climb higher. And for the first time since arriving at the capital, Mara felt something that wasn't fear or desperation. She felt like maybe, just maybe, she could actually win.
The feeling lasted exactly 3 days. 3 days of people treating Mara differently. Some with grudging respect, others with barely concealed hostility, most with the kind of cautious calculation that came from reassessing what she could do to them. 3 days of council meetings where her presence was tolerated but her voice largely ignored. 3 days of Ronan navigating an increasingly fractured nobility while trying to hold his kingdom together. And then the message arrived from Ashford. Mara was in the training yard with Cassian when a messenger found her, a young wolf, barely 20, wearing the mud-stained colors of a frontier rider. Miss Vance. Message from the village of Ashford. Urgent. Her blood went cold. She broke the seal with shaking hands. The letter was from Mrs. Chen, written in the careful script of someone who didn't write often. The words were simple, devastating. Collectors came again. Took everything left. Your father tried to stop them. He's hurt bad.
We need help, please. Mara read it twice. Then again. The paper crumpled in her fist. What is it? Cassian asked. She couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Her father. Hurt. Because she'd left, because she'd drawn attention, because... Mara. Cassian's hand on her shoulder. Talk to me. I have to go back. To Ashford? That's 4 days' ride. Then I leave now. She was already moving, heading toward the palace. Get me a horse, supplies, whatever I need. You can't just leave. Your nobility now, there are protocols, security. My father is dying. She rounded on him. Protocols can wait. Ronan found her 20 minutes later, throwing clothes into a bag with furious efficiency. He took one look at her face and closed the door behind him. Cassian told me, I'm coming with you. No, that wasn't a request. And this isn't a negotiation. Mara didn't stop packing. You're the king. You leave the capital right after a coup attempt, and the council will tear itself apart. I go alone. I fix this. I come back. Mara, don't. Her voice cracked. Don't tell me it's dangerous or I should wait or send someone else. That's my father. That's my home, and I left them to face this alone. Ronan crossed to her, taking her shoulders firmly. This isn't your fault. Isn't it? I came here. I made noise. I drew attention to Ashford. And now you're going to go back and help them. I know. I'm not trying to stop you. His grip gentled. But you're not going alone. Take Cassian, take guards, take enough force that the collectors think twice before trying anything. That'll make it worse. They'll see it as a threat. Good. Let them. His eyes were hard. You're not some villager anymore. You're House Kyle. When you speak with my authority. Use it. They left within the hour. Mara rode at the front of a group of 20, Cassian and 18 palace guards, all mounted, all armed. Ronan had wanted to send more. She'd refused. This needed to look like protection, not an invasion. The judgment wolf followed. She hadn't asked it to, hadn't even known it could leave the palace grounds. But when they'd ridden out, the creature had simply fallen into step behind her horse, silent and terrifying and absolutely unmovable when Cassian tried to send it back. I guess you have a new pet, Cassian had said. It's not a pet. Tell that to the thing following you like a loyal dog. The ride was brutal. 4 days compressed to 3 by pushing hard, stopping only when the horses demanded it. Mara barely slept, her mind churning through worst-case scenarios. Her father dead. The village burned. Everyone she'd grown up with punished for her choices. Stop, Cassian said on the second night, when they'd made camp in the ruins of an old watchtower. Stop what? Torturing yourself. Whatever happened in Ashford, you didn't cause it. The system caused it. The tribute laws caused it. You just had the courage to stand up and say it was wrong. My courage got my father hurt. Your courage got you a voice loud enough to fix it. He poked the fire with a stick. You're thinking small again. This isn't about one village or one tribute collection. This is about changing the whole rotten system. I'm one person. You're one person who made the Alpha King kneel, who rides a creature that shouldn't exist, who survived a coup by being smarter than everyone who tried to kill you. He looked at her across the flames. Stop acting like you're still just a candle maker. You're not. You haven't been since the moment you slapped Ronan in front of the entire court. Mara wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. Because he was right. She wasn't that person anymore. Couldn't be, even if she wanted to. She'd been changed by everything that happened, hardened, sharpened, transformed into something that fit this new world she'd stumbled into. The question was whether she'd let that change destroy her or use it to build something better. They reached Ashford on the afternoon of the third day. The village looked worse than when she'd left. The fields were empty, harvest taken. The livestock pens stood vacant. Even the smoke from chimneys seemed thinner, like people were rationing firewood. People emerged as they rode through. Mara saw recognition dawn on familiar faces. Shock, fear, wonder. Mrs. Chen was waiting in the square, her face lined with new worry. When she saw Mara, she let out a sob of relief. "You came! I didn't know if... Where's my father?" "The house. Doc Warner's with him, but..." Her voice broke. "It's bad, Mara." Mara dismounted and ran. Her father's workshop looked the same. Same crooked door, same smell of tallow and beeswax. But inside, everything was wrong. Her father lay on a cot near the cold fireplace. His face was gray, one side bruised so badly his eye was swollen shut. His breathing was shallow, labored. Doc Warner, ancient, nearly blind, the only medical care Ashford had, sat beside him with a wet cloth and a helpless expression. "Mara," her father's good eye focused on her. "You shouldn't be here." She knelt beside the cot, taking his hand. It felt small, fragile. When had her father become fragile? What happened? Collectors. They wanted double tribute, said it was punishment for insubordination. Each word seemed to cost him. "I told them no. Told them you were under the king's protection now. They laughed. Said the king doesn't care about frontier trash." "Who did this? Does it matter?" "Yes." Her voice was ice. "It matters." Doc Warner cleared his throat. Captain Veck wasn't with them. Different soldiers, mean ones. The lead one called himself Sergeant Crane. Big fellow, scar across his nose. Mara stood. "Where are they now?" "Tavern. Been there since yesterday, spending coin and boasting about teaching frontier folk their place." Cassian appeared in the doorway. "Mara, get the guards, all of them. We're going to the tavern." "What are you planning?" She looked at her father, bruised, broken, hurt, because someone thought they could act without consequences. Thought a human life was worth less than wolf pride. "I'm planning to make an example." The tavern was the largest building in Ashford, which wasn't saying much. 2 stories, crooked roof, floor that creaked under weight. The kind of place where frontier workers drank away their exhaustion and tried to forget tomorrow's labor. Mara kicked the door open. Conversation died. Every head turned. The collectors were easy to spot, 5 wolves in royal colors clustered around a table near the back. Drunk, loud, laughing about something that probably involved the misery of others. The one with the scar across his nose looked up. Saw Mara. His smile turned predatory. "Well, well, the king's little pet. Come to entertain us." Mara walked toward the table. Behind her, she heard Cassian and the guards file in, blocking exits. The judgment. Wolf's shadow filled the doorway. "Sergeant Crane." "That's right, and you're the candle maker who thinks she's special." He stood, swaying slightly. "Heard about you. Heard you got lucky, found some old blood, convinced the king you matter. But out here?" He gestured at the tavern. "Out here, you're just another human who needs to remember her place." "My place?" Mara stopped 3 feet from him. "Let me tell you about my place. I'm House Kael now, which means when you assault my father, you assault the king's family. When you steal from this village beyond authorized tribute, you're stealing from the crown. And when you sit here drinking and laughing about it," her voice dropped, "you're committing treason." Crane laughed. So did his companions. "Treason? That's rich. You going to arrest us? You and what authority?" Mara pulled a scroll from her coat. The royal seal gleamed red and unmistakable. "This authority, signed by King Ronan Kael himself, granting me full power to investigate tribute irregularities and punish those responsible." She let that sink in. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to return everything you stole beyond the legal tribute amount. You're going to apologize to my father and this village, and then you're going to ride back to the capital to face judgment for assault and theft. Crane's smile faded. You can't. I can. I am. And if you resist, she gestured behind her, my guards will be happy to convince you. One of the other collectors stood, shifting into fighting form. She's bluffing. She's just a human. We can... The judgment wolf stepped through the doorway. The collector sat down very quickly. Crane looked between Mara and the creature. His bravado crumbled. This is insane. You can't just... I'm nobility. You're soldiers who overstepped. The law is very clear about what happens when soldiers abuse their authority. She leaned forward. You have 10 seconds to decide. Comply and face legal punishment. Resist and face that. She nodded toward the judgment wolf. Crane's jaw worked. Then, fine. We'll return the excess tribute. But the king will hear about this. You can't just... The king already knows. Why do you think I have this? She held up the scroll. You're done here, Sergeant. Permanently. They left under guard an hour later, looking significantly less confident than when they'd arrived. The excess tribute was returned to the village, enough grain to see them through winter, enough livestock to rebuild the herds. It wasn't everything. Could never be everything. But it was enough. Mara's father was still weak, but Doc Warner said he'd live. The bruises would heal, the damage would fade. But something had changed in Ashford. Mara could see it in how people looked at her. Not quite fear, not quite respect. Something more complicated. She was one of them. But she was also other now, transformed into something that didn't quite fit the village anymore. Mrs. Chen said it best on the morning Mara prepared to leave. You did good, girl. Real good. Stood up for us when no one else would. She paused. But you can't stay here anymore, can you? No. The admission hurt. I wish I could, but you're needed elsewhere, I know. Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. Your mother would be proud. Your father too, though he's too stubborn to say it proper. Mara looked around the village square. At the place she'd grown up. The people she'd known her whole life. I'll fix this, she said. The tribute system. The way they treat frontier villages. All of it. I promise. I believe you. Mrs. Chen's smile was sad. Just don't forget where you came from. Don't forget us regular folk when you're living in palaces. Never. The ride back to the capital felt different. Lighter, somehow. Like a weight had lifted. Cassian noticed. You're smiling. I helped them. Actually helped. That sergeant will face charges. The village has enough to survive. My father's alive. She looked at him. For the first time since I got to the capital, I feel like I actually did something good. You did more than good. You showed that frontier villages aren't helpless, that someone with power actually cares. He paused. The council's going to hate this, you know. You just set a precedent. Other villages will expect the same treatment. Good. Ronan's going to have to back you. Publicly. Completely. That's going to make enemies. I know. And those enemies will come for you. Harder than before. Mara looked back at the judgment wolf, padding along behind them like a nightmare made loyal. Let them try. The capital welcomed them with chaos. Word had spread about what happened in Ashford, about Mara using royal authority to punish corrupt collectors, about her riding into her home village with guards and the judgment wolf and demanding justice. The frontier villages loved it. Mara heard stories, already exaggerated, already becoming legend, about the human girl who stood up to wolves and won. The nobility hated it. She heard those stories too. Accusations that she was overstepping, that she was using Ronan's authority to pursue personal vendettas, that she was destabilizing the entire tribute system out of spite. The council called an emergency session within hours of her return. This cannot stand, Lord Brennan, the man they'd tried to force her to marry, stood before the assembled nobility, his face red with rage. She used royal authority to undermine legitimate tribute collection. She arrested the king's own soldiers on trumped-up charges. She's creating precedent that will cripple our ability to maintain order in the frontier. Mara stood beside Ronan's throne, wearing formal dress that felt like armor. She'd learned to let them talk themselves out before responding. Legitimate tribute collection, she said when Brennan finally paused for breath. Is that what we're calling assault now? Theft? Soldiers getting drunk and boasting about teaching humans their place? Those are internal matters. My father's broken ribs are internal? The village grain stores being emptied beyond legal limits is internal? Her voice carried across the chamber. Or is it only internal when it happens to people you don't consider important? Your father is one man. The frontier is hundreds of villages. We cannot run an effective system if every soldier's actions are questioned, if every collector is subject to arrest for doing their job. Their job is to collect legal tribute, not assault civilians, not steal beyond quotas, not terrorize villages into submission. She turned to address the full council. I have the king's authority to investigate tribute irregularities. What I found in Ashford was criminal abuse of power. I enforced the law. If that's controversial, maybe the problem isn't my actions. Maybe it's the system. You're a child playing at politics, Lady Moira said from her seat. She'd been released pending trial, though under heavy guard. You see one village's suffering and think you understand the complexity of ruling an entire kingdom. You don't. You're right. I don't understand how you can watch people starve and call it necessary. I don't understand how you can brutalize humans and call it order. I don't understand how this system has survived this long when it's so clearly broken. Mara met her eyes. But I understand that something has to change. And if no one else will do it, I will. Ronan stood. The chamber went quiet. Lady Moira makes a fair point. Miss Vance is new to politics, new to nobility. She doesn't understand all the complexities of governance. He paused. But she understands justice, understands right from wrong with a clarity that centuries of compromise have dulled in the rest of us. And I think that's exactly what this kingdom needs. He turned to the council. I'm establishing a new position. Tribune of the Frontier, someone with authority to investigate tribute irregularities, oversee frontier governance, and ensure villages are treated according to law, not tradition, not convenience, law. Uproar. Ronan waited for it to die down. And I'm appointing Mara Vance to that position, effective immediately. More uproar. Lord Brennan's face went purple. Your Majesty, that's final. She's proven she can handle the responsibility. She has the courage to stand up to abuse even when it's unpopular. And his eyes swept the chamber. She has my complete trust and authority. Anyone who undermines her undermines me. He sat back down. The message was clear. The council session dissolved into argument, but the decision stood. Mara was Tribune of the Frontier. She had power now, real power, power to change things. The question was whether she could survive long enough to use it. That night, Ronan found her on the same balcony where they'd stood after the coup attempt. The city sprawled below, all light and shadow and life continuing. You've made a lot of enemies today. I've had a lot of enemies since I got here. What's a few more? He moved to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Tribune of the Frontier, it's not a traditional position. I may have invented it specifically for you. I noticed. It gives you authority, protection, the ability to actually fix some of the problems you identified. He paused. It also makes you a target, more than before. The frontier houses lose power if you succeed. They'll fight you. I know. And you're still doing this. Someone has to. He was quiet for a moment, then the recognition bond. It's getting stronger. My wolf is insistent. Mara's pulse quickened. What does that mean? It means eventually we're going to have to address it. What it means. What we are to each other. His hand found hers on the railing. I'm not asking for an answer now. You've been through too much. But I need you to know. He turned her to face him. I don't want you because of politics or bloodlines or strategic advantage. I want you because you're the first person in 300 years who's made me feel like something other than a crown and a title. The words hung between them, raw and honest. I don't know how to do this, Mara admitted. The bond, the politics, being Tribune, all of it. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. But I need to ask, do you want this? Any of it? The position, the responsibility, the connection between us? Because if you don't, if you want to walk away, I don't want to walk away.
The admission surprised her, but it was true. She'd come here to save her village, had stayed to survive, had fought to prove herself worthy. But somewhere along the way, this had become more than survival. This had become purpose, a chance to actually change things, to make the kingdom better, not just for Ashford, but for everyone like her, everyone who'd been told they didn't matter because they were born on the wrong side of a power structure. "I want to stay," she said, "want to be tribune, want to fix the system, and," she met his eyes, "I want to figure out what this bond means. With you, if that's still an option." Ronan's smile was genuine, warm, transforming his normally severe face. "It's always been an option." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper, more certain, carrying the weight of everything unsaid between them. When they broke apart, Mara was breathless. "Okay," she said. That's new? Good new or bad new?" "Definitely good." His laugh was quiet, pleased. "Good. Because there are traditions around recognition bonds, ceremonies, formal claims. The council will expect—" "One crisis at a time," Mara interrupted. "Let me fix the frontier first. Then we can worry about ceremonies." "Deal." They stood together on the balcony, watching the city below and the stars above, and Mara felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The formal investiture as tribune happened 3 days later. Mara wore white, traditional for new positions, with the crimson and black of House Kyle embroidered at the collar and cuffs. She stood before the full council and every major noble house and spoke the oath Ronan had written specifically for this position. "I swear to uphold the law, to protect the frontier villages, to ensure tribute is collected fairly and justice served equally, to speak for those without voice and fight for those without power. This I pledge on my blood and honor." Ronan placed the tribune's chain around her neck, silver links with a wolf's head pendant. It was heavy, both physically and symbolically. "Rise, Tribune Vance, and may your service bring honor to the crown and justice to the realm." She rose. The assembled nobility bowed, some deeply, some barely, but they all bowed. Mara Vance, candlemaker from Ashford, was now tribune of the frontier. She had authority, power, and the king's protection. The hard part was just beginning. Over the following months, Mara threw herself into the work. She traveled to frontier villages, investigating tribute collection personally, found corruption in 3 territories and recommended dismissal of the governors involved, reformed tribute quotas to account for crop failures and disasters, established appeal processes so villages could challenge unjust collections. The frontier villages loved her. Mara heard the stories, how she was called the people's tribune, how songs were being written about the human girl who stood up to wolves, how children in Ashford played games about riding the judgment wolf into battle. The nobility hated her more with each reform. 2 more assassination attempts were made, both foiled, one by palace guards and one by the judgment wolf literally appearing from shadows to intercept the assassin. "It's like it knows when you're in danger," Cassian said after the second attempt. "Maybe it does," Mara replied. She'd stopped questioning the creature's loyalty. It followed her everywhere now, silent and protective and absolutely terrifying to everyone except her. Ronan backed every reform she proposed, publicly, completely, even when the council protested, even when noble houses threatened to withdraw support. "You're making enemies for me," Mara told him one night. "Good. I was getting bored with the old ones." Their relationship deepened slowly, carefully. The recognition bond was undeniable now. Mara could feel it, a pull toward Ronan that went beyond logic or choice, something primal and absolute. They didn't rush it. Both of them knew what formal bonding would mean, the political ramifications, the expectations, the pressure, but they also knew it was inevitable. The moment came 6 months after Mara's appointment as tribune. She was returning from a frontier tour, 2 weeks visiting villages, hearing complaints, fixing problems, when messengers met her on the road. "Tribune Vance, the council has called an emergency session. Your presence is required immediately." "What happened?" "House Thorne has challenged your appointment. They're demanding the position be dissolved and you be stripped of authority." Mara's blood ran cold. Magnus Thorne, still under house arrest but apparently still pulling strings.
She rode hard for the capital, arriving covered in road dust and exhausted. The council chamber was packed, every noble house represented, every council member present. Magnus Thorne stood at the center, looking smug despite his guards. "Tribune Vance, how kind of you to join us." His voice dripped false courtesy. "We've been discussing your tenure, and we've discovered some troubling irregularities."
Such as you using your position to enrich House Kael at the expense of other houses, such as you showing favoritism to certain villages while punishing others, such as you overstepping your authority and making decisions reserved for the king himself. He smiled. "In short, you've abused your power, and we're calling for your removal." Ronan stood from his throne. "These accusations are baseless." "Are they, Your Majesty? We have documentation."
Testimony from villages claiming the tribune demanded bribes. Records showing tribute reductions that benefited Kael Holdings specifically. Magnus gestured to a table loaded with scrolls. "The evidence is overwhelming." Mara's mind raced. She'd been careful, documented everything, followed the law precisely. This was fabricated, had to be, but if they'd created convincing forgeries, "I'd like to see this evidence." "Of course." Magnus handed her a scroll. "Start with this. A sworn statement from the village of Millbrook, claiming you demanded payment in exchange for reducing their tribute quota." Mara unrolled the scroll, read it. Her blood went cold. The signature at the bottom was real. She recognized the handwriting, Thomas Bridger, the same man who'd been knocked down in Ashford Square, a man she'd helped, a man who'd thanked her personally. Either he'd been coerced, or the signature was forged. "This is fake." "You would say that, but we have 17 similar statements, all from villages you visited, all claiming similar abuses." Magnus's smile widened. "Face it, Tribune. You're caught." The council erupted into argument, half demanding her immediate removal, half defending her. The chamber descended into chaos. Mara stood frozen, her mind racing. This was it, the trap she'd been waiting for. They couldn't beat her directly, so they'd fabricated evidence, made her look corrupt, destroyed her credibility. And if she couldn't prove it was fake, she'd lose everything. "Enough!" Ronan's voice cut through the noise. "These accusations require investigation. I'm suspending Tribune Vance's authority pending—" "No!" Everyone turned to look at Mara. She stepped forward, addressing the full council. "You want to destroy my credibility. Fine. I'll make this simple. Trial by judgment. Right now. If I'm guilty of corruption, the judgment wolf will know. Let it decide." Silence. Magnus's smile faltered. "The judgment wolf only judges matters of life and death. This is life and death. My life, my authority, my ability to help the people who need it." She turned to Ronan. "I'm requesting formal trial. Let the creature decide if I've abused my power." Ronan looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew what she was doing, calling their bluff. The judgment wolf couldn't be fooled, couldn't be bribed. If it judged her guilty, she deserved removal. If it judged her innocent— "Granted," he said quietly. "Prepare the trial chamber." 20 minutes later, Mara stood in the same arena where Vivian had nearly died. The judgment wolf waited in the shadows, eyes glowing yellow. The council watched from the tiered seating. Every noble house, every witness. This would settle it, one way or another. Magnus stood across from her. "This is foolish. You're gambling everything on a creature's whim." "It's not a whim. It's truth." Mara looked at the judgment wolf. "I'm ready." The creature emerged from the shadows, walked toward her with that same predatory grace, stopped, lowered its massive head, and bowed, just like before. Submission, recognition, absolute certainty. The council erupted into shocked silence. "Impossible," Magnus breathed. "It should have—" "She's guilty. The evidence is fabricated," Cassian's voice rang out. He emerged from a side entrance carrying scrolls. "We've been investigating since the accusations surfaced. The signatures are forged, the testimonies were given under duress, and the man responsible for coordinating it all," he looked directly at Magnus, "was you." He spread the scrolls on a table. Evidence, real evidence, communications between Magnus and the forgers, payments to villages willing to lie. The entire conspiracy laid bare. Magnus's face went white. You can't prove? We can. We did. You tried to frame Tribune Vance because her reforms were cutting into your profits. Frontier villages you'd been exploiting for decades were suddenly protected. So you fabricated evidence to remove her. Cassian's voice was cold. That's conspiracy, fraud, an attempted coup, again. Guards moved in, surrounding Magnus. Ronan stood. Magnus Thorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy against the crown, fraud, and attempted manipulation of royal authority. Your house is forfeit, your title revoked, and you will spend the rest of your considerably long life in a cell thinking about your choices. They dragged him away screaming. The council chamber emptied slowly, nobles muttering among themselves. Some looked relieved, others calculating, all of them reassessing what Mara represented. When it was just her, Ronan, and Cassian, Mara finally let herself collapse into a chair. That was too close. That was brilliant, Cassian corrected, calling for trial by judgment. He couldn't refuse without looking guilty. The judgment wolf could have killed me. But it didn't, because you're not corrupt. You're exactly what you appear to be, someone actually trying to help. Ronan crouched in front of her chair. But this won't be the last attempt. They'll keep coming, keep trying to destroy you. I know. And you're still doing this. Someone has to. He smiled, took her hand. Then let's make it official. All of it. The bond, the position, everything. Mara's heart stuttered. You mean formal bonding ceremony, you and me, recognized mates. It'll give you additional protection, additional authority, and his voice softened. It's what I want. What my wolf has wanted since the moment you walked into that throne room and challenged everything. Ronan, you don't have to answer now, but think about it. Please. She already knew her answer. She'd known it for months. Yes. His eyes widened. Yes? Yes. Let's do it. Make it official. Give them something else to be scandalized about. She pulled him up close enough to kiss. Besides, I'm tired of people questioning whether I belong here. Let's make it absolutely clear. His smile was brighter than she'd ever seen. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The bonding ceremony happened 3 weeks later. It was held in the Grand Hall, the same place where Mara had first slapped Ronan in front of the entire court, full circle. Every noble house attended. Some because they had to. Some because they wanted to witness history. Some because they were genuinely happy. Mara wore white and crimson, traditional bonding colors. Her hair was actually styled this time, swept up and threaded with silver that caught the light. Ronan wore formal armor, polished until it gleamed, with the Kyle crest prominent on his chest. They stood before the council, before the nobility, before everyone who'd tried to destroy them. The ceremony was ancient, older than the kingdom itself. Words in a language Mara didn't fully understand but felt in her bones. When it came time for the vows, Ronan spoke first. I claim you as mate, as equal, as partner in all things. Your enemies are mine. Your victories are mine. Your life is mine to protect and cherish. Then Mara, her voice steady. I accept your claim. Offer mine in return. Your burden is mine to share. Your kingdom is mine to protect. Your life is mine to cherish and defend. The recognition bond flared. Mara felt it, not just emotional but physical, a connection that went soul deep. She gasped. Ronan's eyes flashed gold. The presiding elder, an ancient wolf whose age was measured in centuries, spoke the final words. By blood and bond, by choice and claim, you are mated. None may separate what has been joined. Let it be witnessed. Witnessed, the assembly responded. And just like that, Mara Vance, candlemaker from Ashford, became queen consort of the Northern Territories. The celebration lasted 3 days, but on the 4th day, Mara returned to work, traveled back to the frontier with Ronan at her side this time, visited villages, listened to complaints, fixed problems. They established new systems, fair tribute collection, appeal processes, protection for villages against corrupt officials. It wasn't perfect, couldn't be. Too much was broken, too much needed fixing, but it was better, measurably, tangibly better. 6 months after the bonding, Mara stood in Ashford Square again, this time with Ronan, this time as queen, Her father was there, healthy now, watching with pride barely concealed behind his gruff exterior. "You did good, girl," he said quietly. "Your mother would be proud. I'm not done yet." "I know, but you've started. That's what matters." Mara looked around the square, at the village she'd grown up in, at the people she'd fought for. They weren't wealthy, probably never would be, but they had enough, had security, had hope that tomorrow might be better than today. That was worth everything. Ronan's hand found hers. "Ready to go home?" "Yeah, I'm ready." They rode back to the capital as the sun set, the judgment wolf padding along behind them like a guardian shadow. Mara Vance had come to the capital to save her village, had stayed to survive, had fought to change a broken system. And somehow, impossibly, she'd won. Not completely. Not perfectly. There would be more fights, more enemies, more battles ahead. But for the first time in her life, Mara felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. A human queen in a wolf kingdom. A candle maker who'd become a force of change. A woman who'd refused to bow, and in doing so had transformed everything. The capital gates rose before them, massive and imposing, but not threatening, not anymore. This was home now, and Mara was just getting started.